I can't believe how much went wrong in this mission in Icarus. I've been absolutely loving the game so far. I've been playing with Arrow and Name Gear like I am here and going through some missions, but this was definitely one of the tensest missions we've had so far. The mission was to pick up this transmitter type thing and take it into the polar environment in order to stop some storms or something like that. But as always, the first thing I had to do was try and get some gear together. Now, thanks to completing the earlier missions, I can now bring some special gear. So you can see I've got a special pickaxe here. I didn't have to make this, I already had it from the beginning. Getting the transmitter wasn't going to be as easy as normal. In the earlier missions, we only ever had to go pick up 1 or 2 things from a box, and in this one we had to go find 3 different supply boxes to get 3 different segments to put it together to make this transmitter. As always, survival is a priority, so we had to spend the first few minutes just trying to do some hunting, building some tools up, things like that, so we were ready for the journey. The reason we were trying to kill so many different things on this is because we knew we were going into the polar environment, so we figured we were going to have to make fur. And fur is surprisingly hard to get hold of. Every time you kill something, you only get a few little pieces of fur at a time. There seemed to be loads of bears around in this mission, and this first one absolutely destroyed me. Thankfully I had teammates who could take it out for me and resurrect me, but this wasn't the last time I was going to end up unconscious on this mission, at the hands of some horrible bear. We were still gathering and moving through the night. We'd picked up 1 of the pieces of the transmitter, but we wanted to try and get to a decent location to make a base before we bothered settling down, and that meant no sleeping bags, and that meant fighting things in the middle of the night. Eventually we decided we were going to struggle to keep on going. I was running out of water, running out of food, I had barely any health left because I'd been knocked unconscious earlier, so we decided to set up a base quickly. Making thatch bases like this is super quick and a really good thing to do if you think that you're going to be moving on and you're not going to be trying to sort of weather a bunch of storms here. The thatch is incredibly flimsy and can get destroyed in a couple of attacks, but it'll do to provide some shelter so you can put down sleeping bags and things like that. Now, we desperately needed water, and one of the ways to get water is to melt ice, so I decided to brave it and try and head out into the ice, just to pick up a few little chunks so we could start putting that on the fire and turning it into drinkable water. As soon as I got into the snowy biome though, there was a snowstorm starting up, which meant I'd start getting exposed, and that's incredibly dangerous, because I don't have any armor on at this point. Back in the safety of the thatch hut, then we could put some of the water on the fire, which would start melting it. We can make some water flasks, which would start filling up if they're in there too, and it meant that we had a supply of water that was pretty safe. We had loads of meat, so we could cook that, so we had food, and Name Gear could make an oxygen generator where you just put some oxide and sulfur in, and then we have oxygen for as long as we need it. While we were trying to heal, we heard noises outside, and then this happened.
Feel ready for this?
Holy shit.
Oh, it's a big one!
He's inside the house. Oh my god.
No, not yet.
Oh, the floor torch!
Oh!
He's got so much health left. The door's open.
No, no, there's a polar bear in the door.
I think there's more than one polar bear, you know.
Oh fuck, I just got killed through the back wall.
I'm gonna raise it, I think. Try. No, can't.
I mean, I wouldn't bother.
Can we start building more stuff to, like, to slow him down? Can we make more walls? More walls.
Fuck, I can't easily.
He's at half health. Half health.
Oh my god, you just...
I'm dead again. I got killed by a wolf. There's a wolf in the base. There's a polar bear and a wolf in the base right now.
Yep, that's not great.
You remember when I said, oh, I'll just make it out of thatch, it's fine. The polar bear absolutely destroyed us, so I had to respawn. And I tried to respawn a bed, but it said it wasn't sheltered. Then when I did respawn, this happened. I spawned right next to the bloody polar bear that had just killed me. Now when you respawn, you take an experience penalty, so you can see at the top left, my experience bar is now red. That means I kind of have an experience debt that I have to try and like earn back before I'll start getting more experience. Now while all this was going on, it was pitch black, there was a blizzard outside, there was a polar bear chasing me, I was pretty sure there's a wolf chasing me as well, and I got knocked unconscious again. Name Gear managed to respawn at the beds as well, and now what followed was him trying to sneak around in the dark, finding our bodies to revive us, while also trying to avoid a polar bear that he could only see by its health bar because he has a skill that lets him see the health bars of enemies. Name Gear managed to get us back on our feet, and using his green glowy arrows, the sort of flare arrows, we could start looking around. Bear in mind, we didn't have any weapons because we needed to go back to our corpses and back to the base to try and find them, and we knew there were still polar bears in the area. We could see them wandering around, but they hadn't aggroed us yet. So what we had to do was to try and sneak around and get all of our stuff back without getting murdered. Thankfully, the polar bears lost interest and we were able to go find all of our different corpses and stockpiles that were there, and then find the bits of the base that were remaining. I found random things like there was the door lying on the floor. Most of the walls of the base had gone, but a lot of our crafting benches and things that were actually a bit more expensive to make were still there, which was a bonus. I put the base back together as quickly as I could just so we had some shelter so we'd be able to sleep and respawn if we needed to. At this point there was a storm raging outside, which meant the thatch building was getting wrecked slowly, but we needed things like meat, we needed fur to be able to make some fur armor to go into the ice pit, so we had to go back out hunting in the middle of this storm. With a few furs crafted, we could start working on the textiles bench and making suits of fur armor. The fur armor would protect us from the cold, and give us a little bit more protection if we ended up getting in any more fights against polar bears. For a while, all we were doing in the game was constantly wandering around, killing stuff, carrying the carcasses back to the base, and then making more and more fur armor. I'm skipping literally like an hour of murdering stuff at this point. We were struggling to find a lot of animals because we'd killed so many in the area. We were even occasionally going into the ice to try and find more. For a while, it was all going well and we were making pretty steady progress. Then this happened. I got smacked in the back by a polar bear just as a storm rolled in.
I got a bear, I got a bear.
Are you ready?
Oh, I haven't got a bear. He hit me. Hit me with the roof.
Oh, I'm still alive again. The bear doesn't like it. I'm in a front. Just fucking shoot the bear.
It's got so much health left.
Well then, let's do so. It's stuck on a rock. Stuck on a rock. Oh no, fuck! It's moving again.
All right, hold on.
Ah! Oh, I got stuck. It got stuck. Yeah, fucking. It's not stuck. Ah, fucking hell! That's not fair.
Change the arrow.
Ouch! Jesus, it went flying.
Half health. Arrow too far
I'm
away.
dead, I'm dead, I'm dead.
I'm gonna try and res.
Good luck.
Keep him busy, keep him busy.
Is there another bear somewhere?
Thanks, oh, Jesus.
I'm deeply wounded. Oh, I'm dead. I kept him busy for a while. Yeah, I'm dead on the other side of the base.
I think he's stuck.
Okay, don't go too close to him, because remember what happened.
Don't move, don't move. No one move.
I'm fine with that.
I've run out of arrows. Wait, I'm making more arrows.
Cool, wait, spicy bean.
Don't move, don't move, don't move. Oh, he's moved, he's moved. He's moving away. He's at quarter health.
Oh, that did a lot of damage.
Arrow.
Oh.
Arrow.
Hey, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead.
Well done, well done.
Res me! With that bear dead, a storm rolled in, and then just when we thought we were safe, another bear attacked. Got no thing, I'm dead.
So
We couldn't kill this one, we didn't have enough arrows, so we just waited until they were bored of killing me, and they eventually wandered off back to the Arctic. We kept on gathering fur, but we were constantly getting beset upon by bears, whether they were normal bears in the forest where we were hunting animals to try and get lots of fur, or whether they were polar bears that kept deciding to walk out of the polar regions.
Oh. Got another
Fucking polar bear! Ah!
Oh.
no.
Not ready for that.
I am
I'm
gonna
dead.
hold back because
Yeah, I would. I'm gonna.
don't go to me.
No, I'm just trying to get. I don't know where you are anyway.
It's just staying on my body. It's not running after any of you.
Yeah.
We had to wait absolutely ages for that one to leave until Namegear could get back to me and resurrect me. Thankfully, all this bear had done was knock me unconscious. It hadn't been destroying the base or anything like that, and we were very nearly done with gathering fur. With all the fur armor made, we started our preparations to go out, so that meant taking the oxygen tanks, taking some water bladders, and trying to build some little bits of base, because we knew this was going to be cold, even with all our fur armor. So we decided to have some like ready-made shelters that we could just pop up as soon as we got into trouble. We took our first steps into the cold areas, and it was absolutely brutal. As soon as you go out into the snow, you start losing a load of temperature, it just drops down. There were snowstorms constantly, because that was the thing that the mission was meant to be about, setting up this thing that would somehow stop the snowstorms, and we still had 2 pieces of the device left to retrieve. The snowstorm was way too much for our fur armor, so we had to start building bases, just to try and stop some of the snow getting on us, I guess, stop some of the cold winds, try and prevent some of the exposure, because we were losing health insanely quickly. Also, notice Namegear has a polar bear head on. That's because he kept on trying to hunt every polar bear we saw, just so he could make that hat. Once the storm had passed, we could make a bit more progress. We had to keep on moving because we didn't want to be out here while it was dark, and that meant trying to move as fast as we could, just killing everything in our way, avoiding that polar bear that was over there on the left, and then making as much progress as we could when the storm stopped. Moving through this biome is absolutely terrifying. It's really hard to see whether there's going to be like a polar bear around the corner or even against the white snow, and there's so little shelter, there's so little cover, and you need to make sure you bring everything with you, because as you can see, once you get this far out, there's no trees, there's no fibre, there's just the odd little piece of wood left on the ground. When another storm rolled in, we knew what to do this time. Just immediately get a shelter down, give us something that would block the majority of the wind and the cold, and then get some fires down that would heat us up. Obviously, putting fires in the middle of a thatched building is kind of dangerous, but it seemed to work okay. There's a mechanic in Icarus where when there's a snowstorm, the roof will get snow on it, and that adds tons of weight to it. So if your building isn't very strong, like it's just made out of twigs like ours was, you have to constantly repair it or replace it, just trying to sort of knock the snow off. The storm got worse and worse, and we were having to constantly repair, and we were losing temperature. So I foolishly decided to put in an extra wall right next to the fire. Remember, these walls are made out of twigs. Immediately the shelter that we were in, which was just a 1x1 square, caught on fire. Thankfully, Arrow had a fire whacker that he'd decided to bring with him, so he could put it out, and we didn't make that mistake again. We were having to constantly repair the building during the storm. It was like breaking all the time. We were slowly getting colder and colder, which meant that we were losing health all the time, and things looked pretty bleak, especially when the whole roof just blew off. Eventually though, the storm passed and then we could escape. We had to destroy the wall because I hadn't actually put a door on it, and then we could head back out to try and make a bit more progress. We had an incredibly long way to go, and it definitely felt like a long way just because it was so cold and we were always having to stop because of these stupid storms. In the snow biome, you also have to contend with crevices that will suddenly appear before you, and they're quite hard to see until you're close to them, but you can just hop over them. I just wouldn't want to fall down one, especially if there's polar bears about. Eventually we came to the second storage crate. This was going to give us another part of the transmitter that we needed to make, and then we had to make our way over to the third crate to finally be able to assemble it. When we were right near the third crate, we saw that a blizzard was rolling in, and thankfully we saw that there was a little cave down here that we could start mining our way into just to give us a little bit of free shelter. Because remember, every time we're making one of those shelters, we're using up bits of wood and fibre, and we don't have a lot of that left. We made a little fire in the cave and then decided what to do next. We didn't need too much space in here, and it was starting to give us a little bit of shelter, but we were still getting dangerously cold, which meant we could be losing health. If you go too far into the cave, you get this debuff from being in a cave, which will eventually give you pneumonia, so we kinda had to wait near the entrance a little bit, being slightly scared that there might be cave snakes in there, these sort of wormy things that spit poison at you, that would make even bigger problems for us. The storm got really bad, but we were staying alive. We had 2 fires, or 3 fires even, to try and keep us warm. Arrow was still losing health somehow, and it turned out that he'd forgotten to put his fur trousers on that I'd made him. So he'd just come out into a snowstorm with no trousers. Eventually the storm looked like it was passing, so we decided to go out to try and get the 3rd piece of this transmitter. Now, it was starting to get a little bit dark. It gets dark insanely quickly in this, especially when there's storms and things like that. So we felt like we didn't have very long to try and get this finished. Remember, we also had to make the journey back after we'd done this. We found a 3rd storage crate just above the cave, and that had the last component that we needed to put it together. We had each taken one of them because we didn't really know what these things were for. We'd never done anything like this before. And we were trying to look for an objective, but we realised all you had to do was combine all of these different components, and then you could put the thing wherever you wanted within the snow biome. Once I had all 3 components in my inventory, then I could craft the transmitter, and we realised that it needed shelter, so you had to put it somewhere high up in the snow biome where it had shelter, and we decided just to do it where we were, because there's no point wasting time looking for a better location. Frustratingly, the only building materials we really had were thatch, so we decided to just make another little thatch shelter like we had before and put the transmitter in. We had no idea how long this was going to take, but once we activated it, it started going incredibly slowly. We had to have a door on, otherwise it considered it to be not enough shelter, which meant I was just in this 1x1 little square room with the transmitter. It started off fairly well. It was making incredibly slow progress, and we were a little bit worried it was going to get dark, but it was making progress, and all we had to do was sit there and wait. Then we got the warning that a snowstorm was coming. Shelter.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you try and get up to you?
For some reason we decided that I should be the one to sit there with the transmitter and the other 2 could stay in the cave where they'd be a little bit safer. I think the idea was that if a polar bear came or something like that, we wouldn't all get killed in one go. But it meant that I was in charge of trying to repair this whole thing while a storm was going. Repairing it wasn't too bad at first. I could just keep on replacing things if I needed to. I could use the hammer to repair stuff, but we decided it'd be a good idea if Name Gear came in to help. So we'd have 2 people with hammers who could keep repairing stuff, and then if a polar bear did attack, Arrow would still be able to come up and revive us. We were doing a pretty good job of just replacing things whenever a hole appeared in the walls, and then this. Okay, we've got a little bit of time now, I think. Throughout all of this, Name Gear had been trying to make a sloped bit on the roof, but apparently he'd panicked and it had all gone wrong somehow, so he'd end up building some ridiculous fat structure up there. But I don't understand how he could have gone wrong. All you need to do was put a sloped bit on and then the sides.
You need to activate it again, because it stopped being on.
What? Oh, because he opens the door. It's started at 0?
Oh no.
It started at fucking 0?
Oh no.
Despite the adversity, I was very cool, calm and collected and just started it again. So now we were in a situation where it was definitely getting darker. It was past 7 o'clock now. The building was starting to fall apart more and more, and Name Gear had built a ridiculous structure on the top that was adding an extra load to it and falling apart, but we couldn't really see what was happening. We could just see pieces of it falling into the shelter. We had to be constantly repairing, and not only that, we had to worry about our stamina, which was dropping because it was so incredibly cold, and we had to worry about the hammers needing to be repaired every now and then, because we only had seconds every time one got damaged before pieces would break or the roof would fall off, and if that happened, then it would start at 0 all over again. Just don't open the door. Can you go up there and take a picture of it? Because the roof is... Fucking hell!
What?
Oh my god, what did you build up there? The device is still going, the device is still going. There's too much weight up there. It wasn't looking great. Eventually it got to the point where rather than just trying to repair the roof, I just kept making new roofs to replace it as soon as the old one broke, because the roof was just going in one fell swoop. 99. Whoa! That scared the shit out of me.
Oh.
We're getting readings.
What the shit was that?
Look outside. Time to dropship.
What?
Return to dropship.
Yeah. So the mission was done, and all we had to do now was get back through the ice and snow and get back to our dropship. This wasn't going to be so bad because that device was meant to stop the storms, so all we had to do was try and keep it a little bit warm, cook some of the meat, melt some of the ice to get some water. We had to get Arrow back out of the cave because he knew that there was a polar bear just outside there, but things were looking up. We hurried down to go and collect Arrow out of his cave and try and provide a little bit of light so we could work out where that polar bear was that was harassing him. Thankfully, it had kind of moved away so Arrow could come out and join us. We pretty much just sprinted through the night. We had no way of making sleeping bags and things like that to pass it, so rather than just waiting for absolutely ages in a shelter, we decided to chance it and just kind of run through the dark. We weren't 100% sure if lighting the torches would attract polar bears to us, so we kept them unlit for most of the time. I still don't really know how that mechanic works. Eventually, with one of Namegear's flare arrows going up, we started to see trees in the distance, and we knew that meant we were getting really close to being out of the snow biome and back to relative safety. I mean, there's still bears in the forest, but it was a lot safer than where we were. We'd finally made it back to the base where there were sleeping bags and supplies and everything we could need, and then we realised there was another bear near us. Oh fuck, there's a bear! There's a bear! It's not a bad bear, it's not a bad bear, but it's a bear. Get it! Get it!
Don't look back. Don't look back.
I'm stuck in a rock! I'm stuck in a fucking rock! Can someone be a better shot, please? My health's low.
Go inside?
I'm dead. Eventually, the other two killed the bear, and then we could go inside and start gathering ourselves. I had no health because I'd just been knocked unconscious, but here we had water and food and oxygen, so that wasn't too much of a problem. We gathered our supplies one last time, and then we could say goodbye to the base and start heading back to the dropships. The dropships comparatively weren't that far, so we just had to jog through the forest to get back to them. Just as we got back to the dropships, the sun was starting to peek over the mountains, which looked really nice. This is an incredibly pretty looking game. And then I just had to wait for Arrow and Namegear to head off in their dropships before I could return to safety. And this mission was completed. This was easily one of the scariest things we've done in Icarus so far, and I never want to go back to that snow biome again. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn your notifications on, all of that good stuff. I love making these Icarus videos and I want to carry on doing them, so show a bit of support if you want to keep on seeing them. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You are an absolute legend, and goodbye.